This is the morning brief from the Economic Times.
For only rupees 499, you can book Ola's soon-to-be-launched green scooter. And boy did people lap up the offer. 1 lakh reservations in the first 24 hours and counting. The electric vehicle space has everyone excited. The old boys of the auto sector are revving up their engines too. Mahindra & Mahindra was among the first to hit this road. Tata Motors plans to accelerate and overtake the others with 10 different electric vehicles by 2025. Tech mogul Elon Musk is also keen to take his Tesla for a spin on Indian roads by setting up a manufacturing capacity in the country. Electric vehicles are cheaper to run and less polluting than petrol or diesel cars. So much buzz around them and so many apparent reasons to buy. Then why are we not seeing substantially more EVs on the roads? Are the automakers in slow lane? Are there speed bumps? Or are the customers reluctant to take the driver's seat in these EVs? All this and more in this episode. From the Economic Times, I'm Rachana Phadke and you are listening to The Morning Brief.
टाटा मोटर्स की लेटेस्ट मीटिंग के ऊपर जो एनुअल मीटिंग उनकी होती है उन्होंने क्लियर कट अनाउंस कर दिया कि 2025 तक 10 नई इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स लॉन्च किए जाएंगे.
The electric two-wheeler manufacturer Hero Electric has raised 220 crore rupees from Gulf Islamic Investments and Oak Capital. The company is looking to use this capital for raising manufacturing capacity with an aim of achieving a sales target of 1 million vehicles per year.
Ola Electric has begun taking bookings for their upcoming electric scooter. The booking amount is 499 rupees. The company claims they already have received over 1 lakh bookings.
I have with me on front passenger seat today Nehal Chaliawala, who writes on EVs extensively at the Economic Times. I will also be talking to Tarun Mehta, co-founder and chief executive officer of Ather Energy, which has established itself as a prominent name in the electric two-wheeler space. Nehal, let's go to the basics. What is the landscape looking like right now? I mean, EVs have been in the news for a long time now, but I want to understand who are the players, what are the products, and how big is this industry right now?
If we look at the Indian market, we have players like Tata Motors, Hyundai, MG Motor who have electric cars, and sales have improved of late, but there's nothing much to write home about. If we look at last year, about 4,600 units were sold. That's less than 0.2% of the overall car market. And same with two-wheelers, where there are literally dozens of EV sellers in India right now. But the offtake is still less than 1%. Last year, about 150,000 units were sold, which is just about 1% of the two-wheeler market.
So it is a relatively new space. I mean, really comparing it to the traditional auto space may not be fair. Way back in 2017, Minister of Road Transport, Nitin Gadkari, had famously said at a convention of Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers that the manufacturers need to go green or they will get bulldozed. And I remember that word had really caused a lot of buzz around that time.
मैंने एक निर्णय किया कि 1 अप्रैल 2020 से हम लोग यूरो 6 के इमिशन नॉर्म को मैंडेटरी करेंगे. तो ये मैन्युफैक्चरर सब इंडिया के मेरे पास आए और वो बहुत मुझे समझा. मैं बोला तुम आए तो मेरे साथ, नहीं आए तो मैं तुमको घसीटते हुए ले जाऊंगा, मैं नहीं बदलता. अगर तुम नहीं बदलोगे तो आएंगे तो तुम्हारे साथ, नहीं आएंगे तो तुम्हारे बिना, नहीं तो तुमको घसीटते हुए ले जाऊंगा, नहीं तो बुलडोज करूंगा, और तुम अगर जिद ही करते रहोगे तो मेरा बैंड बजा बजा.
What has changed since then? Because it is looking like a reality now, but in terms of policy and reforms, how different is it now? Because it seems there is something that is giving confidence to the likes of Ola and Tata's to commit big investments in the sector.
So Rachita, EVs have for the last 3-4 years now been promised to be the next big thing in India. And automakers are again turning bullish. Tata Motors, Mahindra, Ola, Ather, Hero Electric, everyone is pouring more investments in EVs. And there's primarily one reason for that, which is the government has increased subsidies for electric vehicles. So since 2019, the center has a policy called FAME 2, which is an acronym for Faster Adoption and Manufacturing of Electric Vehicles in India. So they have been giving subsidies under that, but despite that, the takeoff was really low. Last month, they increased subsidy under FAME 2 for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And besides that, Delhi, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan have so far announced more subsidies on top of this. And more states are expected to follow suit. Manufacturers really think that EVs can be competitive price-wise to conventional vehicles, and now they could take off.
The Maharashtra government, as we know, has issued an electric vehicle policy. This aims to make 10% of new vehicle registrations under electric and have 25% electrification of public transport and last mile delivery by 2025.
दिल्ली सरकार बहुत बड़े स्तर के ऊपर इसमें सब्सिडी का प्लान बनाया है। जैसे अगर आप टू व्हीलर या थ्री व्हीलर खरीदते हैं तो लगभग 30,000 रुपये तक की आपको सब्सिडी मिल सकती है। अगर आप फोर व्हीलर खरीदते हैं तो आपको लगभग 1.5 लाख रुपए तक की सब्सिडी मिल सकती है।
So have the prices come down substantially? Because at one point of time, the EV versions were quite expensive and had a premium over the regular diesel and petrol cars, right?
Rachita, they still have a premium over conventional vehicles.
Can you give us an apples to apples comparison? What kind of price range are we looking at?
Sure. So if you look at the two-wheeler space, a 125, 150 scooter would cost you something around 80,000, 85,000 in the market right now.
Right.
A two-wheeler with a comparable performance should cost you about 1,30,000, 1,20,000, and that's after subsidies. And if you want something which is more affordable, it costs you anywhere between 70 or 80,000, but then the performance is not that good.
And despite the gap in the prices of the product, it is still believed that the EV turns out to be cheaper in the entire life cycle. How is that? What is the maths at play here?
So it depends on your use. Okay. So if you have really long commutes every day, EVs make sense for you even today. That's because even though they are expensive upfront, the running cost is really low because electricity is much cheaper than petrol, which is crossing 100 rupees a liter now almost everywhere in India. But if your use is really less, say you just ride about 5-10 kilometers a day, then to break even on that upfront investment you made, that takes a longer time. So that's why if we see in the commercial space, taxis, etc., their EVs do make sense even now because they have a lot of use every day.
Okay. Nehal, I was talking to some people who own EVs, and one of the things that keeps popping up in conversation is the charging aspect. How accessible are charging points? And because it seems that they're still concentrated in bigger cities. So how is this network coming up?
EV owners primarily charge their vehicles at home, even the four-wheelers. You plug it in at night and you have a fully charged vehicle in the morning. But the thing is, you need public charging only when you're taking longer trips, or say you take a trip and something unexpected comes up and you are on the road longer than you want it to be. So in that case, you may need a public charger, which are far and few in between. So that's the whole issue. So that's why a lot of EV owners find themselves stranded by the side of the road when they have to unexpectedly take a longer trip or something like that.
Nehal, you said that people charge even four-wheelers in their apartments. How does that work? For example, if you are living in a multi-story, is there a charging point common for everybody in the building, or how does it actually work?
One common solution to that is if you have a dedicated parking spot in your building, the company provides a charger with the vehicle. So you just mount it in your charging space and connect it with your home. Like you extend a wire from your home to the charger and it works out for most people.
In fact, out of sheer curiosity, I visited an EV charging station yesterday just off the highway in Navi Mumbai, just to understand how the process actually works. I met this gentleman, Hussain Shah, a taxi service provider who was there to charge his car. And Nehal, it was interesting. He was giving me a crash course on how he actually charges his car. And it was fairly simple. You just had to plug and charge. and basically you connect your car to the appropriate charger. There are different chargers, just like a mobile phone has different chargers. The cars have different chargers, and then you key in your details on the display screen there. You choose the appropriate charging option, and there are different rates. For example, yesterday one of the chargers, for using that for 15 minutes you had to pay something around rupees 67. Another one, the rate was around 112 rupees 50 paise. So you just pick whatever is appropriate for you and charge. In fact, I spoke to him. Let's just listen to what he had to say about it.
हुसैन, आप इलेक्ट्रिक कार कब से चला रहे हैं?
5 महीना।
और इतने दिनों में आप जो चार्ज कराते हैं, आपको हर जगह चार्जिंग स्टेशन मिल जाता है?
नहीं, पूरी जगह नहीं मिलती है, कुछ जगह पे ये थाना है, कल्याण, ये सब जगह मिलती है, बाकी अंधेरी वगैरह ऐसा मिलता है, पूरी जगह नहीं मिलता है, मतलब जहाँ आपको चाहिए उस जगह पे।
तो फिर प्लान करके जाते हैं?
हाँ, प्लानिंग करना पड़ता है उसके लिए। यहाँ पर मेरे को इतना किलोमीटर में पहुँचना है मतलब।
और कितना टाइम लगता है चार्ज करने में?
0 to 100 2 घंटा लगता है। अगर आपका 50% चार्ज है तो मतलब 1 घंटे में चार्ज हो जाएगा।
और गाड़ी आप पूरे बॉम्बे में चला रहे हैं, नवी मुंबई साइड चला रहे हैं, कभी कोई परेशानी आती है इलेक्ट्रिक कार चलाने में?
आती है, बहुत बार आती है।
किस टाइप की परेशानी?
चार्ज कभी ख़त्म हो जाए तो फिर टो करना पड़ता है, फिर गाड़ी के लिए डायरेक्ट टोचन करना पड़ता है अगर चार्ज ख़त्म हो गया तो।
कितने बार हुआ है आपके साथ?
मेरे पास 3 से 4 बार हो चुका है, मेरे साथ टोचन कर चुका हूँ गाड़ी में।
तो चार्ज कितने देर में ख़त्म हो जाता है? अगर फुल चार्ज किया है तो कितने देर चलता है?
150 किलोमीटर चलता है, टाइम नहीं बता सकता। 150 किलोमीटर चलता है, मतलब 155 किलोमीटर फुल चार्ज।
तो इमरजेंसी में अगर चार्जिंग प्लेस नहीं मिला तो फिर मुश्किल है?
हाँ, मुश्किल हो जाएंगे, फिर नहीं पहुँच पाएंगे अपन उस जगह पे, चार्जिंग सेंटर नहीं पहुँच पाएंगे।
Hussain was happy with the performance of his EV, but he said that the availability of charging station is a problem, like Nehal also said earlier. He said that his car has been towed a few times after it ran out of juice in locations where there were no charging stations. Let's get some perspective from the EV manufacturer's side. Here's what Tarun Mehta of Ather Energy told me. Tarun, Ola Electric registered 1 lakh reservations for its electric scooter within the first 24 hours of opening its bookings. Your company, Ather, is among the most talked about electric two-wheelers in the country right now. A lot of investment is coming into the sector. What does this mean for the industry?
I think what we're seeing is a pretty phenomenal customer interest right now. We saw it last year when we opened up bookings for 450X. You won't even know the price. You don't even know the specs. You haven't probably even ridden the product, like in Ola's case. And people are super keen to go electric. So I think what we're really seeing is the excitement for the category, the excitement for the entire EV segment. This probably won't come down. I think people have gotten used to the fact that petrol is going to be more than $100, 100 rupees a liter, and it's probably only going to get worse and worse. So there's a little bit of an inevitability that a new buyer has in their head.
If I want to invest in EVs, then how?
Companies, governments, even multilateral organizations are pouring in a lot of resources in terms of exploring alternate sources of energy and promoting sources that do not cause pollution. So from this end, there is a lot of push in terms of developing the entire mobility system.
Tarun, the excitement level is really palpable. The industry for the last 2-3 years has been talking about how EV sales will take off very soon. But if we were to look at the overall sales in the industry, EVs still account for less than 1% of the total automotive sales. There is a lot of consumer interest, obviously, but it's not converting into sales per se. What is happening there?
I think there is a general lack of understanding about how automotive product development works. We've been fairly vocal about it. Even when FAME 2 came about a few years back, somehow everybody expected that sales will take off in 6 months. They couldn't, because the first problem was not that EVs were more expensive and needed subsidies to bridge the gap. That was the problem number 2, 3, 4. Problem number 1 was that there are no products. And what I think FAME 2 set as a direction for the industry was set all of us on a path where domestically designed and eventually domestically produced high quality electric vehicles with long lasting batteries is what the country will fund. This meant more or less a vehicle which is going to substitute a petrol 110cc petrol scooter with an electric scooter. But a product like that does not pop up overnight, right? It takes like a couple of years of R&D, a couple of years of product development, and a lot of supply chain scaling of work in parallel. We've been putting in that work over the last few years. While we launched Ather 450 at roughly the same time when FAME 2 came in, we knew that even we would need about a couple of years to stabilize all of this and ramp up supply chain production to be able to actually go pan India and make a meaningful difference to overall volumes. And I think that's what you're going to start seeing now. While EVs have not even contributed to 1% of overall sales, numbers are shooting up across the board. I don't know of any OEM who's probably not growing at least 15-20% month on month. And some of us are seeing numbers double up overnight. I believe the EV industry will be north of 1 million units over the next 24 to 30 months, at least on a run rate basis. And on the scooter side, we could easily see a 40 to 50% transition to all electric over a 5-year period.
Tarun, that's interesting perspective. Like you said that, the price of the product was really not the topmost concern. Now that we have the products in place, and one of the things was the subsidy that people were looking at. Government has already announced the subsidies, and as a result of that, the prices have come down somewhat. I mean, there was a general expectation that that would trigger demand. You are talking about the demand picking up, but at this stage, are there any other concerns as far as the demand side is concerned, or do you think at these prices people will come in and buy EVs?
At this point, the primary problem of everybody in EV manufacturing is supply chain now. Since July, we are clocking roughly 2x demand than what we can produce, and numbers are shooting up with every passing day. I think we'll be once again supply constrained, finishing all inventory that we locked up during the lockdowns. I think we'll be again supply constrained in a matter of a few weeks. And I think that's going to be true for the entire EV industry. Demand is not a problem. What's fundamentally happened with the new subsidy is the upfront price delta. See, the total cost of ownership of an electric vehicle was already looking quite comfortable and quite competitive to a petrol scooter. So somebody willing to do the math, somebody with a little bit of an early adopter mindset already should have been considering going electric. But what the new subsidy has done, this last 15-20,000 rupee worth of push has suddenly more or less eliminated the entire upfront delta between a petrol and electric scooter.
Tarun, you're saying that, the demand is not a problem, and that, if we were to compare with petrol and diesel driven cars and two-wheelers, it makes more sense to look at the EV version. But, there are still some apprehensions. I mean, why should I buy an EV? Because it still doesn't give me the convenience of a petrol diesel car. I mean, if I run out of juice, it's not as simple as just filling it up in a petrol pump a kilometer away. I've spoken to some people who have told me they've been driving EVs, and they've had instances where they've run out of juice, and they've had to had their cars towed. So, the convenience part of it, is that going to be a dampener?
So you are right. When you think of electric cars, that problem is actually a very real problem. And I do think that the transition of cars to electric is still probably some time away. But when you come to electric scooters or motorbikes or two-wheelers in general, range anxiety is not at the same scale as cars because they're meant for within city travel. Driving distances are far shorter. And once you start using electric, it actually dawns on you that you wake up to a fully charged vehicle every day and you don't actually need to go to a petrol station every 4th, 5th, 6th day. It actually starts being more convenient to waking up to a fully charged vehicle rather than going to a petrol station every now and then. The convenience of saving 3,000 rupees a month on petrol, the convenience of waking up to a fully charged vehicle every day, a noiseless vehicle, a far more comfortable vehicle, easily beats the hands down of knowing that you're sitting on 200 kilometers worth of petrol range.
Tarun, I know your expertise is in the two-wheeler space, but when you are looking at your industry, and I'm sure you are talking to your peers, what is your understanding? I mean, you said that the sale is not translating in the four-wheeler industry at the same pace. How far are we till demand actually picks up in that space, and what are the roadblocks there right now?
I just want to be a little cautious, and I think it would be incorrect to say that EV car sales are not taking off. They're absolutely taking off, given the low base even that segment is today sitting on. I just personally feel that, again, thinking from first principles, and given the driving distances in India, and given the real range anxiety issues that you have in a car, where you may want to go from Bombay to Goa or from Chennai to Hyderabad in your only car that you have, it makes it difficult for you to go electric than a two-wheeler today. So charging infrastructure is a very, very real concern there, but it would still I think we're still going to see EV car sales still take off at a pretty healthy pace, at least for a while. Will it lead to like a majority transition? Will we see like 30% of all cars sold being electric in the next 5 years? I personally feel no. I think the timeline on that is going to be slower than that of two-wheelers.
Fair enough. We'll have to wait and watch how that pans out.
So there's a plan in place, there is demand, but there's also a problem. There's no lithium in India. The element is not usually found in this part of the world. So while India manufactures most of the components of an EV at home, it relies on others, countries like China, Taiwan and Japan, for lithium-ion batteries.
You were talking about the supply chain. I can't not ask you, can we be Atmanirbhar in this space? I mean, when we are talking about batteries, when we are talking about components, we are still quite dependent on imports. Is it possible for India to look at a self-sustainable model?
Actually, I think that's inevitable. I think with the kind of demand that's coming, and people have been seeing it for a while now. Just to give you some context, if all two-wheelers in India were to go electric, we will need roughly about 2, maybe 3 gigafactories of our own. Somewhere between 100 to 120 gigawatt hour of cell production, right? And that's just two-wheelers, without accounting for replacements, without accounting for three-wheelers, without accounting for cars or trucks or buses. So I think that the kind of demand that you're going to have for lithium-ion cells or cells in general is just spectacularly huge. That's like $100 billion in the industry in itself, if not larger. Government has, I think, seen this. I think the push for EV has not been like, in bits and pieces. I think it's a holistic clean energy push, which is why we are seeing charging standardization. We are seeing subsidies for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. We are seeing tightening norms, emission norms for petrol vehicles. And we've also seen supply side support for example, battery manufacturing in India, cell manufacturing in India. I'm somebody who believes that I think I would be very surprised if in a 5-year period, we do not have at least a couple of good locally produced lithium-ion cell options out of India. I don't think we'll take the technology leap. I don't think we'll be technology leaders in a 5-year window. That's probably a little difficult. But I would be quite surprised if we do not have serious scale manufacturing happening in a 5-year window, which is very cost competitive, especially given the incentives that are going to be there on the supply side. It takes time. It is difficult to make lithium-ion cell manufacturing operationally profitable at an investment of less than $300-400 million. So you're not going to see like in 6 months massive gigafactories up and running and operational. But if you take a 3 to 5 year window, I would be surprised if that's not the case. I don't know if we will. I don't think we will be leading technology on lithium-ion cells in India, but I would be quite surprised if we're not, if we don't have serious manufacturing capacities and if you're not operationally quite reasonable and quite cost competitive in a 5-year window. It takes time, so you won't see. It's difficult to make lithium-ion cell production work or be operating or make operational sense at investments of less than $300-400 million. So you will likely not see gigafactories up and running in about 6 months. But in a 3 to 5 year window, I would be quite surprised if that's not the case.
And I guess like with any industry, the ecosystem will grow eventually. And there are enough signs that people are interested in this space. But one thing right now that I hear a lot, I mean, anecdotally, there is evidence that it's not always easy to get loan for an EV. What's the problem here and how is the industry working around it?
Actually, that's changing. That's changing very fast on ground. I think pretty much every bank who's into financing, especially on two-wheelers, now has like a strategic direction to be financing electric two-wheelers. Sure. If you had this podcast 6 months back, I would have been saying that, you know what, there is a big need for the government to make this a priority lending sector and all that good stuff. But I think on ground reality has changed radically over the last 6 months. It's obviously not as deep today as the IC engine side, but it's changing very, very quickly.
Nehal, you heard what Tarun had to say. I mean, clearly he's very upbeat about sales picking up and hopes that the supply chain ecosystem will also develop in the next 5 years or so. On the sales side, do you think that is an optimistic view or is that a realistic assessment?
So Rachita, there is definitely reason to be optimistic, right? Like there's no denying that EVs are the future. China and the West have shown that the transition to EVs is viable and battery costs are dropping. They were upwards of about $1,000 per kilowatt hour in 2010. And now they are about $137 and dropping. So almost half the cost of an EV is battery. And if battery costs are dropping, that would mean that EVs will get more competitive in price with conventional vehicles. So yeah, there are reasons to be optimistic, and even suppliers are seeing that. Now suppliers are also really bullish and they are ready to invest capacities to support the Indian EV industry. But given the past experience, where I've been hearing this for like 3 years now that EVs are going to be the next big thing, I would take the timelines predicted with a grain of salt.
Nehal, you spoke about the supply chain improving. Tarun also spoke about that. The battery has been an issue for a while. How are things looking on that front right now? Because there is also a technology shift happening, whether we are looking at lithium batteries or we are looking at hydrogen. What really is India's stand on that right now? And does it look like we'll have the supply chain in place before production picks up?
So Rachita, batteries remains a dicey issue. The thing is that the technology is really fast developing. So 6 months ago, something which would have looked like the future of battery technology may not be that relevant now. And it's a really high investment game. So that's why people are hesitant to commit money into this, especially when the volumes domestically are not good enough. So that's going to be one pain point for India even going forward, I believe. And during this time, countries like China and South Korea have taken giant leaps. Like China has even secured raw material mines for lithium, which is a core material for lithium-ion batteries, the most popular ones used right now, in Africa and elsewhere. So that's where India really needs to catch up with other countries if we want to be Atmanirbhar.
That seems fair enough. I mean, it's a new sector, and probably once the market forces come in play, demand will be driven accordingly, and things seem to be falling in place. I mean, still early days, but like you said, that there is definitely reason to believe in this space. This is the future. Nehal, I'll be very honest, I've been looking at this space very keenly and thinking if I have to buy a car, maybe it should be an EV. But after talking to Hussain yesterday, I was a little apprehensive whether I should go for it right away or wait a little while till the infrastructure is slightly better. What is your take? Are you looking at buying an EV anytime soon?
So Rachita, let's put it this way. I am not in the market for buying a vehicle right now, but if I were, it would most likely be an EV. So the thing is, with new technology, there is always this risk that, you know, it's not fully there. It's sort of semi-baked. But I think that's the risk early adopters are willing to take.
It may have been a bumpy road for the EVs so far, but there's no denying that the shift to greener vehicles is inevitable. The world is moving in that direction, and so will we. Companies are scaling up their EV offerings, and the government seems to be pushing it with enabling policy framework. There are gaps in the supply chain, as highlighted by Nehal and Tarun. This, of course, is a cause of concern, but hopefully, as this industry grows, the supporting ecosystem will catch up. Whether you buy your EV today or tomorrow, that is your decision, but this is an interesting space and we'll keep an eye on it. That's all from us for today. I'm Rachita Prasad and you have been listening to The Morning Brief. This episode was edited and coordinated by Anjali Venugopalan. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. We look forward to your feedback. Write to us at themorningbreef@timesgroup.com. If you like this episode, please do share it on social media. The Morning Brief airs every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Thank you for listening and have a great day. All external clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credit mentioned in the description.